on today's video, I am very honoured and privileged to have pretty much a hero of mine, the wonderful multi-million selling author Cressida Cowell, whose Wizards of Want series is now in book 3. How to Train Your Dragon is a worldwide phenomenon. So I'm so happy to be joined by Cressida today. Hello, are you there, Cressida?
Hello, Connie. Hi.
How are you? Oh, that's so apt. You're surrounded by books.
Surrounded by books. Books, I mean, held together by magic.
That's what I like to hear. And the magic is the words you write, of course. Are you in the middle of penning a book at the moment, can I ask?
I'm in the middle of illustrating. So I've surrounded here. Look, this is one of my characters in this mine.
Oh, wow.
Mine.
Oh, my God. I feel so, privileged to be seeing pictures that that aren't even out there yet. That's amazing. This is a total exclusive. Anyone watching this video, wow.
That's quite a cool one. They ride, this is Wizards of Want, so they ride on the back of these snow cats, which are like gigantic Canadian lynxes. Yes.
Did you have to go to Canada to do research to meet a Canadian lynx?
Oh, I wish, Connie. I wish I had time to do that. No, I looked it up.
Is this room that you're in surrounded by all your books? Is this where the magic happens?
This is the shed at the bottom of my garden in London, where I wrote all the How to Train Your Dragon books and illustrated them as well, and all the Wizards of Want books.
Wow.
So what happens here in this, I don't know if you can see, this is quite a little shed at the bottom of my garden, just there.
Oh, lovely.
And that's where it all happened.
And so, do you ever write anywhere else, or is it always in your shed? Are you one of these people that very much has to be in the shed to write?
No, I can write. No, I can write elsewhere. I quite like writing. I don't know if you can see. There's a bed at the back of my. Look at my. It's so messy, covered in artwork.
That's because you're a creative. I wouldn't have it any other way.
Yes, I like to say that, Connie. Yes, it's not that I'm messy, it's because I'm creative. Well, the thing is, yes, I like a bed. I think when I was a kid, I didn't have a desk in my room, so I always did my homework on the bed. So I find a bed is a very creative place, and so sometimes I will sometimes write up on my bed in the house in my bedroom. But mostly I do everything here, because here you're not interrupted by the telephone, and I started when I started my career, I had kids, so they wouldn't necessarily interrupt you and things like that. And so this is a really good space. It's away from the house, and you're in your own world, and I'm surrounded by photographs of the places that inspired me and the things.
Oh, wow.
And so it's very much like going into your own world. For instance, How to Train Your Dragon was based on a real place. So I have photographs of that real place. And hang on, let me just see. Yes, it was based on a real little island. That's the island.
Oh, wow.
Island off the west coast of Scotland.
Oh, fab.
So small that when you stand on the top of it, you can see sea all around.
What's it called?
I promised my dad I wouldn't say.
Okay. Let's keep it a secret then. I'm not going to make you divulge. I wouldn't have that upon me, or your poor dad. No family feuds here. So did you go to the island and get the idea? How did How to Train Your Dragon come to you?
Although I grew up in London in a house without a garden, my dad was a mad keen bird watcher. He was chairman of the RSPB, that looks after birds. And so every year when I was a baby, we would be dropped off on that island by a local boatman and picked up again 2 weeks later. That's me going to the same island with my own children when they were babies.
Oh,
they're all dressed up in. And then we spent the whole summer on the island. When I was little, we were just dropped off. And there's no houses, no roads, no electricity, no mobile phones. And even now, if you go to that island, you can't get a mobile phone connection. And we used to spend the whole summer on this island in a house with no television.
Talk about a brilliant way to get your creative juices flowing. You had to entertain yourselves all of that time. So that's where it all began. And so how did you get your first writing deal?
Well, it happened quite a long time ago, well, maybe about 21 years ago. And I'd read English at university, and then I went to art school. So I was a long time in education. I was in education throughout my 20s. But what's interesting is that my second daughter, we were looking, like me, she's interested in writing and also in art. There isn't a single university in this country where you can study both at the same time. Still, I find that really bizarre, because you can see, I mean, look at what I'm doing. I use my art in everything that I do. I need to have all that education. I needed all of that. So I was quite old when I got my first book contract. I just come out of Brighton doing the MA in illustration, and I entered a competition. I always encourage, that's why I'm often a judges on competitions. Because for me, it was my first break. I entered a competition called the Macmillan Children's Book Competition. And although I didn't win it, I met an editor there, and the editor then published my first book. So that was my first way in. So that's why I often go and try and judge competitions, or, encourage children to enter them, because I think that they can have a really, in my own life, they had a really positive effect.
And did you always want to be an author, illustrator, like when you were growing up?
I'm so lucky because I'm doing all the things that I love. So I was very interested in nature as well, but my books are a lot about nature. Again, you can see, look, there's a lot of nature inside my shed. You can see all those.
Yes, the plants.
Very into nature, and my dad was friends with David Attenborough, and I love animals, but I can put all that into my writing. And history, I was very interested in history, but again, Vikings and Bronze Ages, that's all in my writing.
Yes.
But really, it was making things up. It was creating things. And books, part of it for me was I always wanted to get children as interested in books and feeling that books was as exciting as they were from when I was a kid, because I love films and telly. I absolutely love them, and I watch way too much of them. But I think that books have something special that we mustn't lose. So that's really part of it for me, is I want to get children of today thinking that books are just as fun as films and television. So I try and write books that look like sweets. I don't know if you can see.
Yes.
Light shut. That looks like a sweet, not like Brussels sprouts. And I try and make them exciting and funny and full of visuals, full of ink splots, and so they're just as fun as films and telly. But I never dumb down, because children are so smart and they're so clever, and so I try and put in ideas that children are going to find exciting. There's nothing in my books that is so clever that a child hasn't picked up on it. Children always pick up on everything.
And so children. They're often much more intelligent than like our adult counterparts, because they're not cynical and jaded. They're sort of like open-minded, which is what we need people to be.
These huge themes in my books are absolutely that. Prejudice. Wizards of Once is all about two tribes who have been brought up, and the two children from opposite tribes, and they've been brought up to hate each other. And the thing is, the children lead the way. They are the ones, it's actually the adults who are the ones who are so, a lot of my books are about how much we have to learn, exactly that, Connie, from children and their lack of prejudice and openness to other people. And it's the children who sort of lead the way in breaking down the barriers between these two communities. And obviously this takes place in fantasy land, but there are themes in there that we need to learn from. But yes, absolutely. A big theme in my books is how much children have to teach us. Their creativity, they don't know the rules yet. Children are naturally magic. My books are a lot about magic, but children are naturally magic. They don't know the rules yet.
I 100% agree. So when you sat down and started writing Wizards of Once, book 1. Had you already mapped out the rest of the series, or do you sort of find your way as you go, or are you very sort of methodological? Is that the right word? What's the word?
The word. It's a good word.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
Shakespeare is always making up words.
Methodical. Are you very methodical?
Shakespeare, it's good enough for you. He was always making.
What I like is the English language can expand and always gain more words. Are you methodical when you write, or have you mapped it all out?
I'm a combination. So I have an idea of where I'm going, but I'm also very happy to be surprised. There's a reason that hiccup is called hiccup. Hiccup is another name for an accident. And I'm very much a believer in sometimes your unconscious knows things before you do. And so things can happen and I'll respond to it and then I'll adjust my plan. But so for instance, in How to Train Your Dragon, which is a 12-book series, I couldn't plan out a 12-book series so much ahead. But I knew he was going on a quest without realizing it. I knew in each book he was going to be finding a different one of the king's lost things. So so in one he finds his dragon, one his sword, but you don't discover that until book 3, because I love surprises. And so there are some things I know and some things I don't. And in Wizards of Once, for instance, I'll know who the narrator is. The narrator, that's the sort of thing, who is narrating the story. I'll know that, and I'll know what happens in the end, but I don't know exactly how they get there.
Which makes it more exciting for you, I guess, as you're writing it.
Yes, it does, yeah. And I think it's exciting for a child as well. You want to give that feeling, and my books often do that it's ever so slightly out of control.
Yeah.
And I'm often sort of breaking the fourth wall and saying, oh, it's not my fault. And children love that. Children love when you play games with who the narrator is and whether or not I'm in control. This is what I'm talking about. All of these things you can bring up with children, and they're very able to accept those ideas. Who's narrating the story? Is it really me or is it somebody? All of that kind of thing. Children are very open to that. They're very much engaged with all of that.
Yeah, totally sophisticated. Well, I'm very, very excited to be going to read from book 3 from the Wizards of Once series. You've been absolutely fascinating to chat to. Thank you so much, Cressida. And if you don't mind, I might steal some of your top tips for if I write any more books.
Connie, well, it's so great to be asked questions by you, because as a fellow author, the questions to ask, you the questions to ask.
I could literally chat to you for 3 hours, but everyone will be wanting to hear a little extract from the book. So thank you so much, and happy rest of lockdown. I hope this is all conducive to you being able to sort of write and get creative in the shed.
It is. It absolutely is. It enables me, but I'm also doing quite a lot of. I'm doing YouTube as well. I'm reading How to Train Your Dragon every day on Cressida Cowell.
Fab!
So a chapter of the book a day, and it's all completely free. This is the great thing: is that publishers have let up all their restrictions, so we can do all this stuff that we wouldn't be able to do.
100%. I'm going to get my kids to check that out then. How to Train Your Dragon on YouTube, and plus now I'm going to be reading a bit of Wizards of Once. So anyone watching, you can have a Cressida Cowell festival. Thank you so much, Cressida, and hopefully catch you again soon.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
The Wizards of Once, Knock 3 Times by Cressida Cowell. This is a story with 2 heroes. The girl, Wish, is a warrior, but underneath her eye patch she has an extraordinarily powerful magic eye. The boy, Zar, is a wizard, and he means well, but he has a witch stain on his hand that is trying to control him. Note by Cressida Cowell, lost language expert. A long time ago, a young girl exploring the back of a cave somewhere in the British Isles discovered these papers, known as the Wizard Books, hidden behind a large stone. Nobody has ever been able to read them, for they were written so very far away in the distant past that they used a vocabulary and a script that has never been seen before. I have spent many happy years translating the papers of Hiccup the Viking from Old Norse into English. So I was excited to accept this even greater challenge, for these wizard books were written in such a dark age. The language they used has been completely lost to us over the years. After many years of study, I have finally cracked the code of this lost language, and in doing so, I have uncovered something truly extraordinary. Believe the unbelievable. Every fairy story you have ever read has its basis in some truth. It was not only dragons living in the distant darkness. Dragons were only a very, very small part of it. This was a time of magic. Once there were wild woods. The wizards had lived in the wild woods for as long as anyone could remember, and they were intending to live there forever, along with all the other magic things, until the warriors came. The warriors invaded from across the seas, and although they had no magic, they brought a new weapon that they called iron. And iron was the only thing that magic would not work on. From that moment on, wizards and warriors were fighting each other to the death in the wild woods, until one day, a young warrior queen called Sycorax fell in love with a young wizard king called Encanzo. Wizards and warriors should never fall in love, so Sycorax had taken the spell of love, denied to make her love die. And the love had died indeed, and Sycorax had married a warrior, like she was supposed to. And Encanzo had married a wizard, just as a wizard should. So the danger of the curse ought to have been avoided. But 13 years ago, Sycorax had a daughter whose name was Wish, and Wish had a terrible secret. The lingering true love kiss of wizard Encanzo had made Queen Sycorax's daughter magic, and for the first time in human history, Wish had a magic that works on iron. And 13 years ago, Encanzo had a son whose name was Czar, and Czar had a terrible secret. Czar stole some magic from a witch, and the stain of the witch magic was beginning to control him. This is the story of how Wish and Czar met, and how they made friends, even though they had been brought up to hate each other like poison. Wish and Czar have run away from their parents, searching for the ingredients of a spell to get rid of witches. They are outcasts, hunted by wizards and warriors alike, and by something far worse, witches. Witches must never get hold of magic that works on iron. But twice, Wish and Czar have escaped the talons of witches. Twice, they have cheated death. Can they be third time lucky? I am a character in this story who sees everything, knows everything. I will not tell you who I am. Have you guessed yet? Part 1. Forest on Fire. Betrayal. 3,000 years ago, at the end of the era that would later be known as the Bronze Age, the whole of the British Isles were covered in wild woods. Good things lived in the wild woods, animals and magic creatures and humans who minded their own business. But bad things lived there at that time too, some very bad things. 2 of these bad things were flying above the forest even now. The bad things were presently invisible, but if human eyes could have seen them, they would have noticed that they had soft black wings, like the wings of crows, and fingers that ended in talons like a bird of prey, and noses a little like a beak. In fact, they were witches. Not good witches, but very bad witches indeed. And they were flying high, just below the clouds, and as they flew, they were watching something down below. The something was a door, but instead of being where a door really ought to be, vertically opening and shutting between rooms that are safely on the ground in an orderly kind of way, this particular door was flying through the air, flat on its front like a carpet, just above the treetops. It was the little moving speck of the flying door that had first attracted the witches' attention as they flew, with lazy wing beats and the strong currents of air high above the trees, on their way back to their nests in the Lachrymose Mountains. But it wasn't the door itself that was now holding their scrutiny. There were 3 children lying on their stomachs on top of the flying door. The invisible witches looked down at the children, and the children looked down over the edge of the flying door, looking for something in the forest. The witches were hungry, so hungry that long dribbles of black saliva were dripping from their lips. They hadn't seen anything so delicious as these children in weeks. No, perhaps years. And that will give you an idea why people didn't really like witches, either in the Bronze Age or any other age that witches happened to turn up in. But something was making those witches pause before swooping on the tasty, unaware little morsels below and fastening their claws into them. What a cliffhanger. What's making the witches pause? Will they get the children? You'll have to read on to find out. That was Book 3, Knock 3 Times from the Wizards of Once series. A huge thanks to my awesome guest today, Cressida Cowell. But for now, that's it. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please subscribe and spread the word, and see you next time. Bye.